Because it is my guilt, I claim you, grievous miracle. Make my chest hurt with regret. Forge your punishment and nail it deep. Shape my guilt once again.
And thus, guilt, repentance, mourning, and every pain of the soul of all kind were visibly and tangibly manifested everywhere and in all of us. Sometimes in the form of blessing and grace, sometime in the form of punishment and corruption. That divine will, equally pious and cruel, which we could not and will never be able to unravel, was called the miracle.
Blasphemous is a Metroidvania/Souls-like taking place in Custodia, a land of religion that is highly influenced by Roman Catholicism and Spanish culture. The land is poisoned by a force known as the Miracle, which presents itself by sometimes blessing or cursing the land's inhabitants. Our character is the Penitent One, the last of the Brotherhood of the Silent Sorrow, an order of devoted warriors who agreed to a vow of silence and were excommunicated for reasons which will be revealed to us soon. The game plays similarly to Dark Souls, except that it is in 2D. We have a health bar, our fervor, which is used to cast prayers, our limited number of bile flasks to replenish our health, and our Tears of Atonement, the in-game currency that we can use to purchase items or level up our character. There is this unique mechanic where we can consume a portion of our health and our souls to restore fervor. Our main weapon is the Mea Culpa, named after the woman we saw in the opening scene. We cannot equip a shield to block attacks. Instead, we can either parry or dodge, both of which do not consume stamina because there is no stamina bar, although both the parry and the dodge requires a short cooldown. Once we die, we keep our souls. However, our fervor bar is reduced and the amount of souls we collect from killing enemies is decreased. This can be easily fixed by recovering our guilt fragment, which is wherever the Penitent One dies. As we familiarize ourselves with the movement and controls of the game, we are greeted by a shrine. This is the bonfire of the game. Interacting with these shrines restore your health and bile flasks while also respawning any enemies you defeated except for the bosses. Speaking of, our first boss is the Warden of the Silent Sorrow, formerly known as the Eldest Brother, who was once the leader of the Brotherhood of the Silent Sorrow until the miracle happened. His moveset is easy to grasp. His attacks cannot be parried but can be blocked and dodged through easily. Overall, it is not a tough fight. After killing the Warden, the Penitent One bathes himself in blood. This could be seen as a form of baptism within the Brotherhood, since this is the only time we see the Penitent One bathe himself with the blood of his enemies, but it is still open to interpretation. Upon leaving the Brotherhood, we are met by a figure bound by heavy ropes who names himself Deogracias, a self-proclaimed witness to and narrator of the acts of the miracle, and the one who will guide the Penitent One throughout the story.
Regretful be the heart, penitent one. The anguish of the eldest brother has now come to an end. I am Deo Gracias, witness to and narrator of the acts of the grievous miracle. Such is my penance, as yours is silence. The cradle of affliction is what you seek. This can be found in the mother of mothers of the churches. It is a remote place separated from the rest of these lands by a great sacred and forbidden door. Even a wise penitent like me knows nothing of what lies beyond those high walls. However, what I do know is that, according to the rule, one must carry out the 3 humiliations to gain access to what they guard. One of them must be performed in the high mountains, covered in thick blankets of snow and ice. Another in the depths of a dark, entombed church where the sleeper lies. And the last one at the end of the trail, carved by moans that claw their way out of an iron spiral, in the bowels of the bell named Hondo that grows into the earth. Take this thorn and place it on the handle of your sword. If, when the time comes, as you grip your weapon firmly, you notice that it wounds you and makes you bleed, having grown with more thorns sprouting from it, writhing over the figure of the Father carved into the knob, that will mean that you are at the mercy of the grievous miracle, whether for its punishment or its forgiveness.
Making our way through the Holy Line, we acquired the Verdialis of the Forsaken Hamlet, the first prayer we can obtain, which shoots out a wave of song through the floor, walls, and ceilings. Shortly after, we encounter one of the children of moonlight, small infants trapped in a glass and golden case with winged hands holding them in the air. There is a total of 38 children of moonlight scattered throughout Custodia, and releasing them will grant us some rewards later on.
There is no answer to our plea. The miracle has forsaken us, and my ornate throne turns its back on those who await here.
We have arrived in Albero, a village inhabited by many ill people and the Kissers of Wounds, a brotherhood of healers who aid those who are unfortunate at the mercy of the miracle. We can interact with one of its members here, a man named Tirso, who asks for ingredients for medicinal ointments. In the same building, we can find the first Mea Culpa altar. Here we can unlock new attacks or upgrade previous attacks, both of which cost certain amount of souls. Right next to the bonfire, we can interact with a fountain after collecting some specific items, which will transport the penitent one to the Lake of the Silent Pilgrims, where the Blessed Lord of Salty Shores resides. He asks the penitent one to return some items in exchange for certain relics, and trading with him is required for a quest. Relics are items that primarily serve as a means of accessing different areas and items throughout the game, and you can equip up to 3 relics at the same time. Additionally, we can find another person in the church next door named Ludovico, a member of the Order of the True Burial, whose goal is to ensure that all of the inhabitants of Custodia are given a proper burial, as only then will they be able to cross to the other side. He asks the penitent one to bring remains of unburied corpses throughout Custodia. Another similar task is given to us in the ossuary, hidden behind a breakable wall opposite the room with the Mea Culpa altar. Lastly, on the top of the floor building, we can find a dove skull, the first rosary bead that we can obtain in the game. Rosary beads are magical items we can equip. granting us new abilities or improving some specific attributes. Initially, only 2 beads can be equipped at the same time, but this can be upgraded later on. Making our way through the wasteland of the buried churches and entering the building at the end of the level, after carefully passing this dangerous area, we can acquire the Heart of the Virtuous Pain, a mea culpa heart that increases the duration of the parry stance but also increases the recovery time after the parry. Mea culpa hearts are powerful upgrades that can be found throughout the game and can be equipped at a shrine. Only one mea culpa heart can be equipped at any time. Once we arrive at the Bridge of the Three Cavalries, we encounter the Agracias once again. In order to enter through the giant bronze door, the penitent one must witness the 3 holy visages and complete the 3 humiliations. From here, we can visit any of the 3 holy visages in order, but the closest one from the bridge is located within the region of the Mercy Dreams.
Sister of mine, as I foretold you, someone is heading towards the Forbidden Gate. Someone who seeks the purge and excommunication of all that is sacred and rests there. No, no, do not place your doubts on me. I am ready.
An old prison blocked by multiple gates that must be unlocked to proceed and contains a decent amount of hidden rooms. Upon entering, we can easily find a confessor statue. These statues allow the penitent one to expiate any guilt accumulated from dying. Guilt is simply the condition we receive upon dying, which is the cause of the decreased fervor bar and the amount of souls obtained. As we progress through the Mercy Dreams, each descent of stairs is blocked by multiple gates, which forces us to go through divergent paths filled with an array of deadly traps, such as spears that periodically rise up and cannons shooting green orbs of magic, and monstrous guards roaming around, such as dead guys with spears, floating dead guys with spears, and wraiths. At the near bottom of the prison, we can encounter a merchant named Candelaria, who sells us an important key that we need to progress this area further, in addition to other useful items sold at a much higher price. After clearing through a dangerous room, we encounter Viridiana right before the next boss. She offers assistance to the penitent one within only 3 boss fights. If assented to, Viridiana will be present during the boss fight and will heal the penitent one in low health. She grows older, however, each time her assistance is used, and by the 3rd fight she perishes, rewarding us with a prayer that summons shields that damage enemies and protect the penitent one from projectiles. Minor spoilers, but if she is kept alive through most boss fights, or simply refusing her aid, she will appear between the last 2 boss fights and will not be able to help directly, but she will still reward us with the same prayer. In any case, we encounter our next boss, 10 Piedad. His most common attacks are summoning vine sprouts from the ground, either by stomping or throwing vine sprouts and swiping at the penitent one. The simplest way to defeat 10 Piedad is to stick close to him and parry most of his attacks. The only thing you need to worry about is trying to avoid getting backed into a corner. After defeating the boss, we prayed to a saint of the Golden Visages and got transported to the Dream, a desert-like realm. There we find the true form of the Golden Visages. It is through the Golden Visages that we retrieve the Holy Wound of Attrition, our first completion in the 3 Humiliations trial. Just outside we enter the Desecrated Cistern, a large sewer filled with pipes that drop poison and sections of toxic gas, where we encounter the Agracias once again, simply telling us that 2 more humiliations are left. Before advancing any further in this area, we can find the Lady of the 6 Sorrows, a celestial being whose 6 swords plunge into her breast and 1 sword on her left hand. Through her, the penitent one can increase his maximum health, taking out one of these swords each time from the lady. In the Desecrated Cistern, many of the enemies deal poison damage, such as the crawlers and the summons from the heralds. If you buy the Moss Preserved in Glass item from Candelaria, you can reduce the amount of poison damage taken, which will be a little useful in this area. Before returning to Albero through a shortcut, we can find Nacimiento, a giant cursed by the miracle, causing his face to get younger as he ages, and has a face of an old man pulsing on his chest, who he calls the Ancient One. Giving him Quicksilver, a bile flask, and some Tears of Atonement will improve the effectiveness of the remaining bile flasks. At the same time, if you keep upgrading the bile flasks, by the 4th time you upgrade, the old man will partially burst out of Nacimiento's torso. Once all Quicksilver is delivered, the old man will finally detach himself, leaving Nacimiento dead. Also in the Desecrated Cistern, you can find a Sanguine Fountain, which is used to refill bile flasks and also to increase the maximum number of heals by filling empty bile vessels. Both cost a certain amount of Tears of Atonement. There are some hard to grab items here that require a specific relic to reach, which can be found in another area. In any case, we can move on to the next area right beside the Desecrated Cistern. We arrive at the Mountains of the Endless Dusk, one of the mountainous regions of Custodia, whose valley is home to the Great Bell of Hondo. This area contains many sensitive platforms that will collapse upon contact. This is one of the 2 areas where we are introduced to the wall climbing mechanic. There are certain surfaces where if you press the attack button, you can thrust your sword into the wall. While hanging, you can jump up or down and press the attack button once again to keep climbing. This is an important skill to master in this game, not only when facing enemies, but also traversing through difficult and deadly areas. In this area, we encounter some more challenging foes, such as enemies that hurl javelins and roll around, large creatures that charge forward with a huge broken bell, human figures sliced in half who throw a rotating weapon, and winged faces flying in fixed patterns. It is also in this area where we encounter our first mini-boss, Perpetua, a Knight of the Anointed Legion and sister of Esdras, also a member of the Anointed Legion. Her attacks are quick but easy to telegraph. Other than a few strong attacks, Perpetua isn't a tough boss fight. After defeating her, we can obtain the item Perpetuous Protection, which grants slight protection against slighting attacks. In the same area where we fought Perpetua, we can find the Tree of Offering. The tree requires a specific item from a specific quest that is related to the Blessed Lord of the Salty Shores. This entire area is fairly short as we quickly arrive at the entrance of the Great Bell of Hondo, where we can find an old man named Redento, a genuflecting pilgrim with his hands tied behind his back, and an object weighing him down around his neck.
O penitent one, we traverse strange roads under the same firmament, with nigh other trade, nigh other name. My name is Redento, barefoot pilgrim of the Order of the Genuflectors. Prithee, taketh nigh affront in my not looking at thy visage, for we at each moment lean forth, so as not to divert our eyes from the path. Such is our old precept. We are before Hondo, a great buried bell, erected upside down so that its ringing would make the earth tremble and reach distant lands. Now Hondo resoundeth in a deep triune moan that travelleth in echoes through its broad spiraling circles. My feet wish to cross to the other side of this ancient valley, to move on to the next destination. Oh, my sins! Who could help me? I halt here to look for a crossing to the other side, so as to continue my penance in wandering. Ah, don't let it be a disturbance to thee, penitent in guilt, for my feet will find their long-awaited walking. Penitent one, may thy trade silence neither thy spirit nor thy frame.
Hondo is a great bell erected upside down so that its ringing could shake the earth, but the bell does not ring, and instead a great triune moan emanates from its depths. It is a dark, gray area filled with many lifts, ladders, and climbable walls. The area is also filled with bells that produce shockwaves that can damage the Penitent One and can be used to break objects, such as unlocking gates for example. Most of the enemies from the Mountains of the Endless Dusk can also be found here, and there are no bosses in this area as well. This area is tricky to traverse, but it has tons of important items. One such item is a knot of rosary rope found in an area where there is a bell puzzle. This item is used to expand the number of rosary beads you can equip. Upon breaking the 2 statues and ringing the bell at the 3 statues, the platform will collapse and the Penitent One will fall down into the next area. The Grievance Ascends, where the source of the moan heard from Hondo originates. The area is mostly a long vertical descent with several climbable walls and sections of toxic gas. It is filled with ghastly enemies such as ghosts tied to bells, annoying bitches who jump around, ghosts who charge forward with a rapier, enemies stuck to the side of a wall, and even contains encounters where the Penitent One is forced to defeat enemies in certain areas to progress further. This area is one of the more difficult areas to navigate due to the toxic gas and the sheer number of enemies in each room. There is an item here that will make the Penitent One invulnerable to the toxic gas, but the number of enemies here is still a threat nonetheless. One notable character here is Altus Gracias, found in a cave at the far left of the lowest level of the area. She is a creature that became of 3 sisters who did not wish to be married, and so they prayed to the miracle to transform them into something hideous, turning themselves into a knotted, hairy egg, and inside, the 3 sisters became one, adopting a feminine body and a long mane of hair and beard. We can offer her the following items: a black grieving veil, a torn bridal ribbon, and melted golden coins. Upon offering her all of these items, she will hatch from the egg and give us the Egg of Deformity. We can give this to the Lord of the Salty Shores, and he will turn it into a relic, the 3 gnarled tongues, which lets the Penitent One climb roots across Custodia. At the end of this entire area, we can find our next boss, the Tres Angustias, 3 ghostly women wearing black, 2 of them wielding spears and 1 a dual-headed mace. They form a triangular position in a circular pattern, and you must face them while climbing upwards. Upon dealing enough damage, the 3 women become one and unleash 1 or 2 huge beams of light that deal great damage. Of course, falling into the fiery pit is instant death. You can pretty much tank most of the hits, specifically the ones where the bosses throw their weapons, but the giant laser beam and the one spear that produces a shockwave will knock you out, so do be wary of these attacks. But other than that, it is a challenging boss fight, but nothing too hard. Once again, we encounter the Golden Visages, retrieve the Holy Wound of Contrition, meet the Agracias, raise our maximum health, and take a shortcut lift back to the desecrated cistern. At this point, we can return to Hondo and activate the moving platform where Redento is stuck. After activating it, Redento will cross and give you the 4th toe made of limestone, which reduces the cooldown of dodging. Making it through the valley, we finally return to the Brotherhood of the Silent Sorrow. Here we can find a number of important tools. First, another Confessor statue, second, a Gate of Travel, which you may have already encountered back in previous areas, and lastly, a character named Soledad, who can give you the knots of rosary rope and increase the amount of rosary beads you can equip in exchange for some tears. Climbing up, we encounter Redento, stuck once again by a wall that blocks his path. The only way through is to enter this challenge room, one of the first parkour areas of the game. We traverse to the other side of the wall, which can be broken so that Redento can pass through. One important item you can get here is by unlocking the door that requires the key to the chamber of the eldest brother, found after the area where we fought the first boss. Inside this room we can collect the blood perpetuated in sand, an item that allows the Penitent One to turn floating red motes into platforms, thereby granting passage to secret areas. This is the first relic that you can get in the game. The only thing left to do is to complete the final humiliation trial. Our next destination is Where Olive Trees Wither, the beginning of a nun's pilgrimage to the convent of Our Lady of the Charred Visage, and this is also where they gathered olives to use the holy oil for sacred ceremonies. Upon arriving in this area, we encounter Gemino, a prisoner inside a withered tree, and it is assumed that he was put here by members of the church as punishment for some crime. He cannot speak, but if we attempt to talk to him, he will gift us the golden thimble, which is used to carry the sacred olive oil used by the sisters of the convent of Our Lady of the Charred Visage. There is a secret cave here that can be accessed either by completing Gemino's quest or with a relic. Some notable enemies in this area are women who jump and throw exploding jars, creatures that jump up from the ground, and a much stronger version of a flagellant, a common enemy that you may have already encountered in previous areas. Just like the Mountains of the Endless Dusk, this area is fairly short, with some useful and notable items along the way. Right next to this area is the Graveyard of the Peaks, a cold and mountainous region of Custodia, filled with faces of weeping women carved in the mountains in the background, and strong gusts of wind that can be used as an advantage when traversing hard-to-reach platforms. Beside the entrance, there is a cave where we can find another bonfire and encounter Candelaria once again. This time she sells different and more expensive items, one of which is the torn bridal ribbon, one of the items we can offer to Altas Gracias in her quest. Continuing forward, the Graveyard of the Peaks is essentially an upward climb toward the convent, and is filled with a surprisingly low number of enemies, including ghosts and the static enemies from Grievance Ascents, as well as a new enemy that is a moving statue walking slowly back and forth and carrying a tomb upon its back. For the first time, the wind in a video game is actually not life-threatening. Instead, it is finally useful to your advantage because there are paths in this area that require you to use the wind. It doesn't push you back so harshly, so it doesn't make you much more prone to enemies. Again, this area is short with some useful items.
Indeed, sister of mine, our encounter is approaching. The miracle will protect me. I do not need your protection this time. Leave me alone.
The Convent of Our Lady of the Charred Visage is an abbey in Custodia located atop the snowy mountains. It is a sanctuary dedicated to the worship of a woman named Aria, who burnt her face with boiling oil after her likeness was continually used as a symbol of divinity. The church took this to be the work of the miracle, thus she was canonized as Our Lady of the Charred Visage. The convent is strictly matriarchal, as only women are accepted as real members of its clergy. However, like many of the land's more religiously inclined areas, the convent is a twisted house of warped fate, with self-harm and suffering as the most common and notable traits of its faith. This place is fairly treacherous in nature, as the sisters within are vicious protectors who resort to aggression at first sight. Some of them carry massive sensors stuffed with body parts, while others are either tasked with handling traps that activate pots of lava, or are capable of using fire breathing as a form of defense. Fire damage is constant within the convent, but there are a few areas filled with the familiar toxic gas. Here we can access a lift that descends and leads us to a confessor shrine with the item Immaculate Bead, an important item that is required to unlock the good ending and the true ending. To get either of those endings, you must equip the Immaculate Bead and destroy every Confessor Shrine available. Once a shrine is destroyed, a red circle will appear where it stood, and can only be accessed with the bead equipped. But before that, you must die 3 times with the bead equipped. Only then can you enter the red circle. Once you interact with the circle, you enter a trial room where you have to defeat waves of enemies, which changes depending on what location the Confessor Shrine is found, with some trials being easier than others. After completing a trial, we are rewarded with a large sum of Tears of Atonement and a visual upgrade to the thorn that was given to us by Deogracias at the start of our journey. The goal of destroying these Confessor Shrines is to evolve our thorn, and upon having its final evolution, we can unlock either the good or true ending. Moving back to the convent after making it through dangerous rooms filled with annoying ghosts and falling lava, we arrive before Our Lady of the Charred Visage. Now, if you use the help of Viridiana in the last 2 humiliation trials, which is what happened in my playthrough, then this will be the last time you use her aid. Now, upon entering this boss room, we see Our Lady of the Charred Visage in her true form, a monstrous guardian protecting one of the 3 humiliations. Her attacks are slow and easy to telegraph, but it can be very hard to master. Most of her attacks force you to dodge to the sides, thus stopping you from doing attacks. She also has this attack where she fires a line of glowing balls that can be deflected and deal damage to Our Lady if they hit or deflect other similar balls. By the second phase, another hand appears, which leaves more room for more attacks. This phase can be quite tricky and dangerous. You are guaranteed to always take a large amount of damage, especially when Our Lady summons both the rapid bursts of electric orbs and the glowing balls. It is definitely a challenging fight, but nothing too difficult. After defeating the boss, we encounter the Golden Visage once again and obtain the Holy Wound of Compunction, the last thing we need to advance the Bronze Gate. In the same room, if you collect the Golden Thimble from Gemino, then you can fill that thimble with the burning oil found here.
You have been allowed to behold the visage of compunction. Penitent one in silence. After bowing before the holy custodian visages, the door at the end of the Bridge of Calvary has been opened. Traverse now its threshold under the strict eye of His Holiness. We penitents carry such guilt that perhaps the affliction is giving us a second breath. But be wary. Amongst prayers, it might silently come creeping to us one day.
We can now proceed to the Bronze Gate by taking a shortcut back to Albero. Now, if you proceed to the Bridge of 3 Cavalries right away, you will only get the good ending as long as you have been destroying Confessor Shrines on the way. To get the true ending, you must first find Perpetua's grave in the resting place of the sister, found in the Echoes of Salt before proceeding to the bridge. She will give you an item to stop Esdras from fighting you. I obviously did not know this in my playthrough, so I fought Esdras right away.
Sister, I know you are there. Even if I can't see you, hear my plea. After your departure, it is now my turn to prove I'm deserving of our captain's trust. I will not fail, Chrysanta. And may the greatest of pains devour me if I let the penitents through this door. On your guard, penitent one!
This is what I consider to be the first real challenging boss fight in the game, though I beat him in the first try, but I'll stop bragging from now. Esdras has 3 phases. In the first phase, he can swing his hammer, spin around, create a wave of energy, or spin around again with a trail of lightning bolts behind him. So it's easier to fight him with Perpetua's protection, which grants a slight protection against lightning attacks. Despite being a human-sized boss, you cannot parry most of his attacks, except for the hammer blow. In the next phase, Estrus will start making more lightning attacks, and in the final phase, he will summon Perpetua, who still has the same moveset from when you first fought her. I know I said I defeated this fight on the first try, but this was quite a challenging fight, and much more adrenaline pumping than any of the previous bosses.
Sister, forgive me. Now I will cross over to the other side of the dream and return to your side.
Upon defeating Estrus, we can now finally proceed through the Bronze Gate.
I feel my blood turning into black sap, and my aged skin into reddish bark.
Here we enter the Ferris Tree, a small area with a chapel of travel, a room called the Hall of the Dawning, which houses a Quicksilver and will be an important room soon, and finally a door that leads to the next area.
Those you have removed from punishment were Perpetua and Esdras, foundling siblings who went on to be part of His Holiness God. It was said that Perpetua could speak to her brother even after death. For twisted are the paths of the miracle.
But before advancing to the next area, I took a little detour and went back to the Brotherhood of the Silent Sorrows. Right next to where Redento is found stuck is a door that leads to a short parkour section. Upon exiting the room, you can finally break the blocked entryway, get the medium bead of blue wax, and access a shortcut that leads you outside of the first boss room.
I'm not worthy of thine infinite compassion. Blessed are those of us who find it. I will pray for thee and thank the Master for his holy encounter. Now my feet are marching towards holy prohibitions. How can a simple pilgrim advance through such fortification? O Fraternal Father, O Master of Pilgrims, how arduous are your upcoming trials?
With the key of the Eldest Chamber, you can finally open the chamber and collect your first relic, the blood perpetuated in sand. This relic allows you to turn floating red motes scattered around the map into platforms. Some of these platforms are static, while others require you to land on a previous platform for them to appear. Wandering around the Echoes of Salt, you will eventually find yourself in a dried up sea of shipwrecks called the Mourning and Havoc. If you enter this area from the Echoes of Salt, you can only explore a portion of it, but one useful item you can find here is a prayer called the Mirabras of the Return to Port, which allows you to teleport to the last bonfire you visited, an extremely useful tool to get to other areas faster. Other than that, the enemies here are quite challenging to face and they deal extreme damage, so it is best to return to this area at a later time. Not far from where you can find the entrance to the Mourning and Havoc, you can find the resting place of the Sister. This is where you should enter first before facing Estrus on the bridge. Talking to Perpetua here will allow you to avoid the fight with Estrus, but if you already killed him like I did, then Perpetua will simply tell you to leave. Returning to Altas Gracias once more, at this point in the game you can already offer the remaining bridal gifts, and once you collect all of them, Altas Gracias will hatch from the egg and introduce herself, and she will thank you by giving you the Egg of Deformity. Bringing this to the tree where you first fought Perpetua, you will get the hatched Egg of Deformity. You can show this egg to the Lord of the Salty Shores and he will turn it into a useful relic that allows sleeping roots to grow into climbable platforms. Doing this, however, will no longer allow you to interact with Altas Gracias, and in her place, you will find the item called the Knot of Hair. Returning to the wasteland of the buried churches, you can find Redento once again.
are free. Wondrous vision thou allowest me to behold. Blessed be our encounter. It is of little use for me to remain here. Go with the Father, O penitent one.
Now we return to our last stop, Patio of the Silent Steps, an abandoned courtyard with crumbling buildings in the background, and there are sections of platforms that will be collapsed when walked on and will not reform when returning to these sections. This area is fairly short but is filled with deadly spikes and those annoying enemies that jump and throw bombs.
Penitent one, heed my confession. Cowardice taketh root inside of me in the face of this new test by the grievous miracle. Who are we pilgrims, if not sinners, who have chosen wandering as the gentlest of penances? Oh, let my bent back cover my tears. Those screams filled my soul with fright. Thou hast purged my fears and helped this poor pilgrim again. We have chosen different roads, but still, absolution awaits at the end of the path for thee and this sinner. Wherever it is, near or far, in this life or on the other side of the dream, merciful be the heart, penitent one.
After defeating that mini-boss, we can now enter the Mother of Mothers, a grand yet mysterious church and a bastion of faith in Custodia. This giant area is filled with sensors that swing back and forth that deal damage, and 2 areas with even larger sensors. Right next to the entrance is another area called the Knot of the 3 Words.
The Knot of the 3 Words. Here is where the first miracle took place. One devout and tormented youngster asked the High Will for punishment. He placed a wooden log where he sat and prayed. He prayed hoping to be heard. He prayed for pain, so he could ease the guilt that sharply pierced his soul. Then the miracle manifested itself. It made roots grow and twist over his arms and legs, but not a cry nor a complaint came out from his mouth. Every inhabitant of this land bore witness to it, and all of them prayed before the besought eternal joy of that youngster. This triune tree that sprouted years after his death was named the Knot of the 3 Words. For 3 are its twisted trunks, and 3 were the words spoken by that youngster before he died. My great guilt. Every year from its core flows a golden, burning liquid, perpetuating his memory and perhaps to remind us that the first miracle has not abandoned us. For twisted are, were, and will be the paths of the miracle.
If you talk to Redento after defeating the mini-boss from earlier, you can find him one last time in the room with the bent statue. This is the end of his pilgrimage.
Oh, my sins. Is a long journey filled with reflection not enough? What of the calluses on the feet, the cramps in the legs, the thirst, the forehead scorched by a sun that seemeth never to set? And what about the torturing of the mind when guilt pierceth our hearts time after time? What more punishment do ye want, O sins of mine? Thou art before the first pilgrim, the first of the barefoot rule, master of all errant sinners. This old limestone statue was erected where the pilgrimage of the master ended, where he took his last step It was then that the miracle carried him in its arms so he could continue his path on the road of the old processions.
If you equip the 3 toes of limestone he gave to you, the statue will move and allow you to enter a room with the relic called the Nail Uprooted from Dirt, which allows you to jump freely on swampy areas in the game. Returning once again to this room, you will find the remains of Redento, and in his spot is another knot of rosary rope. Not far from where you find the elevator in this area, you will find a peculiar room.
Faceless warrior, stay thy course. I sense a heavy burden within thee, although I can neither see thy face nor hear thy voice. Forgive my manners. My name is Miriam. This place of crimson shadows has summoned me. Something in this suffering land, a will that eludes my understanding, decided that I alter the course of my journey and brought me to this place. And if it has sanctioned this meeting, it must be because we are being put to the test, destined to mutually help one another under its watchful gaze. This crystal that lies before us is what allows me to travel to distant lands. But, as you can see, it is cracked, and its magic extinguished. To restore it, I must find the shards that are scattered throughout your world. I beg you, allow me to show you one of them. It lies beyond this door. This is one of the portals of the Blue Rose that guard each and every one of the crystal shards. The force of its magic will not allow me to enter. Pray, help me, anonymous warrior. Enter in my stead and retrieve the shards. I must return to my kingdom, and I must not tarry.
These portions in the game are called Miriam's Challenges, which are timed platforming challenges split into 5 different areas in the game. The goal is to reach the end and collect the broken shards as fast as possible. Dying will reset you to the beginning, your health, and your battle fasts. Fortunately, there are no enemies in these challenges. Unfortunately, these challenges are quite challenging indeed. After roaming the Mother of Mothers, you can now face your next boss, Melquades, the exhumed Archbishop. To deal damage to the boss itself, you must first take down the hands carrying them. After that, you can finally deal damage for a short period of time. The boss does not have a ton of annoying attacks, and they are quite few and predictable. Overall, this is one of the easier bosses of the game, and after defeating Melquades, you can collect the deformed mask of Orestes. This is one of the required masks for accessing the final area of the game.
I see everything from the highest point of the tried tree in which the miracle has reincarnated me.
Before advancing to the next area, we can find a strangely familiar room.
Oh, behold, gracious lady, a visitor. Oh, please forgive me, penitent one. You stand in the presence of Socorro, our pious lady of the perpetual agony. Isn't she majestic? She's a miracle in herself, unceasing, eternal.
There are 2 things that you can do here. End the suffering of Socorro, which will put Cleophas in jail, or make an offering of the marks of the 3 refuges found by defeating certain enemies in another area. Before entering the next area, I decided to roam the desecrated cistern since I obtained the Nail Uprooted from Dirt relic, which allows me to traverse this area more easily, and I finally stumbled on this.
Oh, hey. Holy shit. I was just recovering from playing difficult games last year. What the fuck just happened?
This is Blasphemous, Alcazar of Grief, a little NES Easter egg that you can find here in the game. It mostly plays the same though, however you only have 3 hit points and only 1 attack. Now that isn't all too bad, the levels here are quite simple as well, and there aren't a ton of enemies and the platforming isn't too challenging. With that being said, there are chests that you can find throughout this minigame. Some of these chests contain Tears of Atonement and additional HP, but some also contain skulls. There is a total of 5 skulls hiding in different parts of this minigame, and collecting all of them will reward you with a skin. That is, if you make it all the way through the entire map and defeat the boss, which is also quite a simple fight. That is mostly it. If you die, you will return to the main game, and to play the minigame once more, you have to spend a surprisingly large amount of tears. Alright, I think you have enough. Dude, I just got here. Wait, don't leave me! Where was I? We now return back to our main path. Our next destination is the Library of the Negated Words, where texts, manuscripts, and artifacts of sacrilege are hidden and locked away. The archivists manage these treasures, and their ghostly forms still wander these halls, reviewing the unholy texts. This area features multiple puzzles, mostly involving ladders and levers. The ghosts that float across these rooms remain transparent until you step on a book, which will turn them opaque and deal damage upon contact. Shortly after, you can find the Watchman of the Library.
The sound does not cease. It creeps on these forgotten walls, and no one can determine its origin or its obscure destiny. For the love of the High Wills, silence it, for I have long yearned for it. For the love of the High Wills, make the sound cease.
To stop the loud noise, simply travel deeper into the library until you find a person banging on a wall that is actually a path to a hidden room.
I, Diosdado by name, Night Watchman by trade, am at thy mercy. You have my gratitude for quelling such an unbearable sound. We are in the Library of Denied Woods, for the pages that lie within these dusty tomes are forbidden and forever shall be. All that accompanies me here are these ponderous keys and the wandering souls that, even after death, still hunger for knowledge. Watch your step, as these halls can be deceptive.
Roaming around, there aren't many important things to do here, so you can now progress to the next area, the Sleeping Canvases, where heretical artifacts and depictions of false idols end up. This area includes multiple instances of large curved blades swinging side to side and death spikes. The enemies are floating paintings, a giant version of the Sleepless Tombs, the mini-boss from the Patio, and the mannequins from Doctor Who. Right next to the bonfire near the next boss, you can find a large mural of a bull standing in front of the room surrounded by cherubs.
You have found some of my brothers, though I still ask you to find the rest of them. Please, keep this canvas made from the gold of our faces, and my brothers will guide you. Penitent one, in finding these holy brethren of mine, you have completed the vision of my birth, which was painted on a sleeping canvas. My name being Hothinero, I was born of the moon and of the torment of a brave bull, and of myself by the grace of High Wills, my holy brethren.
If you have collected at least 20 Children of Moonlight, Hacinero will give you the Linen of Golden Thread, which allows you to fall to chasms without dying. Do note that not all chasms work with this relic. If you collected all of the Children of the Moonlight, he will give you the Campaniliero to the Sons of the Aurora Prayer. In another room, you can find another shop by Candelaria, and one of the items you can purchase from her is the Key of the Inquisitor, an important item for your next destination. Again, this entire area is fairly short, so you can now move on to your next boss. Exposito, the Scion of Abjuration, a giant blindfolded baby held by a wicker woman, accompanied by a strange, human-faced snake-like creature with a scorpion's tail. Surprisingly, it is the snake-like creature that must be defeated and not the giant baby. Regardless, this boss does not have a ton of health, and his attacks are quite slow and predictable, and defeating it will grant us access to the embossed mask of Crescente, another mea culpa altar, and a shortcut back to the library.
I burn from the inside out, and my smoke is a fog that conceals everything.
We now enter the next area, the Archcathedral rooftops. This area provides a stunning view of the intricate architecture of the cathedral below and beyond. There are many lifts and levers here, typically with spikes below them. The enemies are quite tough as they can deal a moderate amount of damage, and a good portion of these enemies fly around. There is one large lift in the middle tower with a statue of 3 faces on it. This is where we can bring the masks we retrieved from the previous boss fights. However, at this point, only 2 masks have been acquired. The last mask that is acquired can be found in the next area, the Wall of Holy Prohibitions, guarded by 2 creatures that look completely identical to the Warden of the Silent Sorrow. Once you defeat them, you will enter a series of jail cells, many of which are interconnected and require keys to unlock. The keys you need are the Key of the Secular, the Key of the Scribe, and the Key of the Inquisitor. The first 2 can be found within the area, while the latter can only be purchased from Candelaria. You will eventually be caught off guard in a certain area, and you will find yourself facing head-on against the next boss, Queers, Returned by the Flames. He is a fast opponent with highly damaging fire attacks. However, he does take a generous amount of cooldown after doing certain attacks. Patience, good coordination, and understanding of the attacks will help you win, as this fight can be quite lengthy. After defeating Queers, you will encounter the Agracias once again.
The one you have pulled from punishment was Kirse, one of the sheltered. He was unjustly condemned to the stake for heresy, and the Inquisitors bore witness to the flames, engulfing his body amidst an atrocious communion of prayers and cries. Still, when it was over, and the flames had died, the merciful miracle called them forth again, and from them, from the ashes and the embers, the body of Kirse rose anew. For fiery are the paths of the miracle.
From here you can now access a shortcut lift back to the convent of Our Lady of the Charred Visage. Here you can raise your health once again, find another Chapel of Travel, and the Mirror Mask of Dolphus, the last mask we need for the lift back in the Archcathedral rooftops.
I awake now from the silver ash that has been my cradle. The miracle calls me.
At this point, you will now have obtained all of the knots of rosary rope.
The mysteries of your rosary are now complete. My task is complete, although my sins have now become unforgivable as a result. I do not know where I will go, but I am sure that it will not be to the other side of the dream. body of blue flame is being extinguished.
Returning to the Arcathedral rooftops, you can face the 3 soldiers of the Anointed Legion as part of the quest with Cleophas. Defeating them will give you the Marks of Refuges. Offering these marks to Socorro will end her suffering peacefully, and you will find Cleophas once again right next to the first bonfire in the rooftops. If you talk to Ludovico about Cleophas and Socorro before, he will give you the Cord of the True Burying, and giving this to Cleophas will get him into finding new pursuits. You can find him one last time in the church in Albero.
Penitent one in charity, this is my new home, and from here shall my vigil begin anew. Take these words I managed to transcribe from the voice of Our Lady amid suffering, so they can become a prayer which you can raise in her memory. The Order blesses you, penitent one in the righteous path.
One last thing before advancing any further into the Arcathedral rooftops, if you have been collecting around 30 bones and give them to the collector in the ossuary, he will show you a room, and in it is arguably one of the toughest boss fights in the game. Isidora, Voice of the Dead. According to some item descriptions, she was once a songstress who would delight the Albero children with her songs. One day, the miracle manifested as she was singing, making the dead in the graveyard sing in reply to her. Entranced, Isidora entered the ossuary where the combined voices of all the dead joined and mixed with her in a lugubrious chant, referred to as the Voice of the Dead. She has a number of intense attacks, and all of them hit quite heavy. Your best chance of winning is to memorize these attacks well and use the appropriate attacks in each window. Fortunately, she only has 2 phases. Unfortunately, she does have 2 phases. In the second phase, the entire room will light up and fireballs will consistently spawn in, causing little room for you to maneuver, not to mention the amount of attacks that have grown dangerous in this phase. This is an incredibly challenging boss fight, so take your time, as I also had a lot of time trying to perfect this fight. Defeating her will give you the severed right eye of the traitor. This is an essential item in achieving the true ending and must be given to the 4th visage beneath the knot of 3 words. At this point, we can now finally head to the last leg of our journey.
Penitent one in sleeplessness, carrying the guilty sword, you have committed the most serious crimes against the Mother and her saints, against the miracle and its outbreaks. We have been entrusted with putting an end to your mission. I, Chrysanta in penance, excommunicate you, expel you, execrate you, with the blessing of our miracle of the greatest pain. And thus shall your name be erased under the heavens.
Chrysanta is a fast-moving opponent with heavy-hitting attacks. Fortunately, most of her attacks can finally be parried. Her attacks are quite easy to telegraph, but the ones where you can parry require some time to get used to. Other than a couple of attempts, she is a challenging foe, but nothing too difficult.
My soul bitten by the miracle.
We now enter the deambulatory of His Holiness, the final area of the game, and here we face our final foe.
In my dreams, I heard your footsteps coming closer. In my dreams, I tried to talk to you and introduce myself. Guardian of the miracle and of the miracle banner, with great pain, I carry the emblem of the Father. I am the hands of bloodied skin. I am the eyes from which our mother gazes. But nothing I know of you, apart from your cold, nameless visage. Apart from your calloused and wounded hands, apart from the mourning of your deaths. No, I know nothing of you. Only the miracle knows. Now may your sword full of guilt with mine of gold collide. Let them hurt and march in procession. I curse you forever in name. I bless you forever in death.
The first phase of this fight is quite short. You just need to deal a massive amount of damage in a short period of time. However, the boss attacks still do fair damage.
You have shattered the mirror in which you saw me asleep. Now you see me awoken as the son of the true miracle.
We now face the last son of the miracle. The only way of damaging him is through his red giant face. To open his mask, the flying sword with the eye must be defeated. The two main obstacles are the constantly disappearing platforms and the random attacks spawning in every direction. The mask will close after some time and you must repeat the process of killing the sword again. Do note that the sword also has its own limited moveset. This fight is very lengthy as the last son has tons of health, but it is not one of the hardest fights of the game, and you will eventually kill the last son of the miracle.
You have freed his holiness from his afflicted torment, and now he walks by the old processions on the other side of the dream. The cradle of the grievous miracle, the final relic, the grail of blood and gold that emanated from the forehead of the Father as he silently lamented the moment of his blessed twisting. That first relic is here, at the top of the Ashen Mountain, next to the turned throne where His Holiness was kissed by a miraculous pain. And now, your final communion with the miracle awaits. Only you will be able to know how much of it has seeped into your guilty heart. came the moment of final communion with the sword born of guilt. A last sacrifice in order to finish penance and break off with the ungodly will of the grievous miracle. But the plans of the miracle are capricious. Penance never ends, but changes, hurts, and condemns at will. There is no place for the penitent one on the other side of the dream. His place is here among us. He is the new father and the last son of the miracle. Recipient of our prayers forever and ever.
And thus shall your name be erased under the heavens.
Now there are two other endings, some areas that I have completely missed, and other in-game contents that I have failed to include here, but this is strictly the chronological order of events that happened in my playthrough. I have yet to replay this game to fight the other remaining bosses locked behind the DLC, and though I have not covered the entirety of the game, I absolutely loved everything it has in store. The art style, the design of the characters, the level design, the music, and the gameplay. It still astonishes me that I had this in my backlog of games for a while, and it's obvious that I missed out on playing such a masterpiece of a video game. With that being said, Blasphemous is not just a 2D Metroidvania version of Dark Souls. It is a whole new world with interesting concepts and stories and characters, and who knows what the sequel has in store for us next.